Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be talking about something I kind of discussed in my previous video where Blizzard hinted about adding PvP talents into PvE environment, and they actually did it. Blizzard actually chose one PvP trait that is going to be selected in PvE environments, and that is going to, the way that it's going to work, it's when you're choosing an essence, and I've tested a lot of this on PTR, you will have this conflict and strife essence that you can choose, and the major ability of this essence, remember, essences have major and minors, and the major ability is going to be a PvP talent usable in PvE environment based on the spec that you're playing at that moment. And there's also going to be a minor ability that's to do with versatility proc that's not really mentioned on Wowhead or anywhere else, but there is a minor one, so it's not just the major ability beside it. But there has been a lot of controversy and a lot of hype around this because not every single essence, or they're not really equal. So first of all, this is going to be mainly looking at the healing, but I'm also going to look at some of the other essences that I find really interesting. Like first of all, we can look at some of the Moonkin aura that's being added as an essence. So Star Surge grants 4% spell critical strike chance to 8 allies within 40 yards for 18 seconds. So all of a sudden, if you have a balanced druid, this is going to add, remember, spell critical strike chance, so that is only going to affect your casters. And considering that in raiding environments, or at least in BfA, it's all been about casters, it's possible that you might have to bring in 2 Moonkins to really cover this, because it only affects 8 allies. I haven't really looked at how it stacks up properly, but again, class identity, certain specs are bringing these major raid buffs. The same kind of deal is happening to Feral Druids with Leader of the Pack, where I kind of covered in last video. While cat form, you increase melee and range critical chance of raid members within 40 yards by 5%. Now keep in mind, this is basically a melee buff. This is a buff for your, your hunters, your melee DPS and things like that. So considering that BfA has been very unfriendly towards melee characters, you might not still see a Feral Druid in that top end content, because you have to consider this doesn't buff the spell critical chance. So keep that in mind. And then of course, rogues are getting more utility through Smoke Bomb. Create a cloud of thick smoke in 8 yards around the rogue for 5 seconds. Enemies are unable to target in or out of the smoke cloud. So a lot of people were upset about this because people already think that rogues have too much utility in Mythic Plus, and Smoke Bomb seems to be like a very strong niche pick for certain Mythic Plus dungeons. We'll have to see how this is going to affect the meta, but considering that rogues got Smoke Bomb, and then you go to something like a Paladin and Retribution got Unbound Freedom, where Blessing of Freedom also increases movement speed by 30%, you have to kind of look at yourself and be like, meta is gonna change. Retribution is gonna be OP, man. You're gonna be able to do this freedom. Oh man, I can already see top 5, top best melee DPS in Mythic Plus. Red is gonna be the top in there. But that's what I mean. Not every single essence is created equal, and we'll look at some of the healer ones. First of all, let's look at the Druid one, and I've tested a lot of this. Like I mentioned, I've been plebbing around on the PTR a lot, and I've tested out the Overgrowth. So for rest of Druids, instantly applies Light Bloom, Rejuvenation, Wild Growth, and Regrowth's heal overtime effect on the target. This has a relatively short cooldown of 45 seconds. And I've tested it, played around a bit on the Proving Grounds and things like that. Honestly, it feels better than it reads. All of a sudden, it feels that Resto Druids have this 45-second cooldown that is going to be extremely strong for single target healing, because a lot of the new Resto Druids come down to the stream and tell me like, I'm struggling to keep up the tank, and a lot of your healing or Resto Druid healing is all coming from mastery stacks. So if you apply Overgrowth on a tank or any target that needs really a lot of single target healing, and you can, the first things come in mind like King's Rest, First Boss, the blobs and things like that, the people get affected by it, you can apply Overgrowth. This is gonna add tons of mastery stacks straight away, and your next Regrowth is gonna heal for a ton. So I can see this being quite strong in 5 months. Not quite certain about raid environments yet, unless you really need that single target healing, but in Mythic Plus, this has relatively strong potential in my opinion. We'll see how this is going to be balanced in the future. We can look at monks. Do I want to look at monks? Because I feel monks won. In a lot of ways, monks have become the winners of this PvP into PvE essence lottery. Because goddamn, look at this. Way of the Crane has made it. Way of the Crane has become an essence. This is by far, without a doubt, one of the best healer essence. And I'll talk about other healers that got pretty strong ones. But Way of the Crane changes your gameplay. It changes your class fantasy. It changes the way that you look at DPS as a healer. Not a lot of other classes in general have received new talents. They received these passive abilities and things like that. But Way of the Crane increases your physical damage by 25. You become immune to all snares and root effects, and you heal up to 3 nearest allies for 150% of the damage done. Last 15 seconds, 1 minute cooldown. Now, this is not as good as it sounds. First of all, it is amazing that they got Way of the Crane, but there is a big concern. This is 25% of base mana, which equals to 25,000 mana cost for a talent, for a DPS talent that's gonna heal people as well. First of all, Mistweavers, in my opinion, were lacking some sort of DPS ability in Mythic Plus. And I was waiting for this for such a long time. This is completely comparable to Holy Paladin. At the start of BfA, they had Avenging Crusader. That was a PvP talent that got moved into PvE. The same exact thing is happening with Mistweavers. The problem here is it's 25,000 mana cost. The main way that most people are using this talent in PvP, or at least I've been told about this because I don't do a lot of PvP, is that you combine it with Mana Tea. Mana Tea is going to reduce the mana cost of your next abilities by 50%. So you use Mana Tea and then use Way of the Crane. So from 25,000 you're going to around 12,000 mana cost. And if you're able to save 12,000 mana during your Mana Tea duration, that's actually a pretty good use of it. So the big concern here, Way of the Crane is 1 minute cooldown. Mana Tea is 1.5 minute cooldown. So you can say to some extent that Way of the Crane is not really going to be used outside of Mana Tea, so you kind of have to wait for it. We'll have to see, but in 5-man content, if you're not running out of mana, you can really make use of this talent and you're going to be DPSing. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if any of the other talents might change with it. But overall, this is, without a doubt, one of the clear winners of the healers in terms of what essences they received. Now let's look at Paladin. Paladin got a... I can't say it's bad or good because I haven't really tested it out in PTR yet. But Divine Favor, your next Holy Light or Flash of Light is increased by 100%, costs no mana, and is unable to be interrupted. So this is a 25-second cooldown. So every 25 seconds, you'll get a huge Flash of Light that is going to heal for way more, and it's going to cost no mana. So overall, we'll have to see at the theory crafting comparing with other essences that are available there. But it's possible it might be strong, even with Glimmer of Light, and we'll talk about Glimmer of Light in this video as well. We'll talk about the changes that are happening, how Blizzard is viewing Glimmer. So even with Glimmer of Light build, you still kind of going to squeeze in some of those Flash of Lights. And every 25 seconds, that could actually fit Glimmer of Light Paladin build quite well, because you only really use Flash of Light when everything else is on cooldown. You can't get that Crusader Strike, you can't get that Light of Dawn, you can't get that Holy Shot. They're all on cooldown. You kind of, okay, I'm going to use my Flash of Light here. And why not use your Flash of Light with Divine Favor? But again, it's all going to be based on theory crafting, whether it's going to be worth it or not. Overall, it's okay, I guess, at the time being. Again, Priests are the second healers, in my opinion, that got really, really strong changes. First of all, let's look at Holy. Holy, again, theory crafting needs to be done for this. Rapid Mending. Prayer of Mending is now instant cast, and jump range is increased by 10 yards. It's pretty much like the only Holy Priest PvP trait or PvP talent that was relatively good in terms of AoE healing. Again, theory crafting needs to be done on this. I don't see this being as insanely overpowered, but Discipline, I do. Discipline is getting a big talent. So Premonition heals nearby targets within 20 yards and applies atonements to yourself. Deals shadow damage to yourself for each atonement you have active and increases the duration by 5 seconds. So I've been testing this on PTR to see the amount of damage that it does. So on my Discipline Priest, it was doing around 5,000 damage per atonement. So in a 5-man group, if I have 5 atonements out and I use this Premonition, which is 12-second cooldown, if I use this in a 5-man scenario, it was doing around 25 to 30,000 damage to me. So it was relatively nothing. Around 10 to 20% of my HP. So it wasn't really dangerous for me to do it, and it extended atonements by 5 seconds. You have to remember that a tier 100 Discipline Priest talent is Evangelism, which extends your atonements by 6 seconds, and it is 1.5 minute cooldown. And Premonition extends atonements by 5 seconds and is a 12-second cooldown, but he has a big disadvantage of dealing damage to you. So in a raid environment, if you have like, I don't know, 15 or whatever atonements out, and you use this Premonition to extend the atonements, you're looking at some sizable damage. We're looking at something like 75 to 100,000 damage area. And considering that a lot of these, maybe there's going to be some eager beaver discipline priests who are going to be, you know, pumping out atonements, like 15 atonements on a raid. And the only reason to really pump out atonements like to that extent is when there's going to be a huge AoE damage happens. So let's say some discipline priest, 15 atonements out on the raid, AoE damage happens, everyone dips to 50% HP, discipline priest uses Premonition, they get like 80 or whatever, 80k damage done. They're looking very, very viable to die. So all of a sudden Premonition has a big disadvantage. Like, it's going to require people to really pay attention, but in the hands of a capable discipline priest, this looks insane. Remember, 12 seconds for a 5-second duration increase on atonements with a downside of damage to yourself. And now let's look at, actually I forgot to mention, there's one other healer who's getting an absolutely overpowered Azeroth trait. I completely forgot about it. I'm really, really sorry guys. And that is Shaman. Restoration Shaman, wait for this. Are you ready? Like, you gotta hold on to something. You gotta hold on to something because you're not gonna believe what you're gonna get. Ancestral Gift. You become immune to silence and interrupt effects for 5 seconds after using Spirit Walker's Grace. I know what I'm gonna be picking. Resto Shaman has won the lottery on this one. And of course, there's a little bit of sarcasm in this. This has caused a lot of backlash in terms of this PvP talents in the PvE environment, because Resto Shaman's arguably got one of the worst essences. This is absolutely garbage when you compare it to your Discipline Priest. This is absolutely garbage when you compare it to your Mistweaver Monk. This is in a lot of ways a big joke to Resto Shamans. Like, when I look at these Azeroth traits, I'm thinking, hey, there's a possibility I might start maining or playing more my Mistweaver Monk, because Way of the Crane is going to be so goddamn fun in 5 mans. Trying to push out that DPS, trying to heal while DPSing. This is going to be really fun. Discipline Priest is gonna be, the skill ceiling is going to be even increased further. Now Discipline Priests can do really good healing by extending their atonements, but they need to pay attention to not die. So skill ceiling is increased. So maybe Discipline is going to be like, you know, again, one of the hardest healers to play in 8.2. And then you look at Resto Shaman and then like, what is this? What is this? Like, legitimately, this makes me so sad. I was almost kind of considering maining my Resto Shaman in 8.2 because I've been enjoying my Resto Shaman a lot in 5 mans and raids. Even in 5 mans, I've been enjoying English potential a lot. But this PvP trade is really bringing me down. Monk is looking really fun. Resto Shaman is looking like a complete joke. And while we're talking about healers, I also wanted to talk about Glimmer of Light. And Glimmer of Light, how Blizzard views it. So Blizzard has actually released a statement for 8.2. There's a lot of Holy Paladins out there that are thinking right now, hey, should I be playing Holy Paladin for 8.2? I'm enjoying Glimmer of Light immensely. Are they going to be nerfing it to the ground so I never be playing it? So basically the TLDR of this kind of topic here is that Blizzard knows that there are issues with Glimmer of Light, but Blizzard also knows that even with Glimmer of Light, Holy Paladins are not really overpowered. They are concerned about the mana cost, because Glimmer of Light Paladin, if they go full on Glimmer of Light, they don't consume that much mana. They're kind of looking at the Crusader Strike basically not costing a lot of mana. Crusader Strike is basically your bread and butter as a Glimmer of Light Paladin, and they're not happy with the amount of mana that how efficient it is to use. So I can see them kind of increasing the mana cost of Crusader Strike, possible, to make it more even with other healers. But they also mentioned that, hey, Glimmer doesn't really scale with intellect. We're not sure what we're going to be doing with this. So I can see, maybe this is my predictions for the future for 8.2. There is a high chance, at least in my opinion, that Crusader Strike, the mana cost might be increased, which is going to be punishing all of the Holy Paladin builds, which might not be the most optimal way. At the same time, I also see that maybe Glimmer of Light healing is going to be nerfed a bit, but it's going to compensate, or they're going to compensate with Glimmer of Light actually scaling with intellect, because it doesn't really make sense that intellect doesn't change your Glimmer at all. So it's possible that in the future, Glimmer is going to diminish because it doesn't scale properly. But maybe Blizzard is going to fix that, but at least Blizzard acknowledges that, hey, people found this Glimmer of Light build, we don't want to nerf it, it's fun, we're gonna keep it, we might incorporate it into the future patches and things like that. So if you're a Glimmer of Light Holy Paladin, don't be sad, or at least be happy. It's still going to be available in 8.2, and if you're playing Holy Paladin, try out Glimmer, it's actually really, really fun. I'd love to hear your opinions on these PvP trait changes. I'd love to hear your opinions on the rest of Shaman sadness. I'm extremely, extremely sad. I'd love to hear your opinions as a Holy Paladin. If you're happy with the Glimmer of Light build, or maybe you want to go back to the previous Holy Paladin build. Maybe you're sick of Glimmer of Light. My personal opinion, I love Glimmer of Light, and it kind of made me play my Holy Paladin again. Let me know, guys. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please do subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you in my next guide.